Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and today I actually want to revisit the right to repair. We've talked about that in the past, but there is actually a rather interesting and I think important snag to getting these efforts essentially rolled out or made into law, at least here in the United States. Now, this is coming from Market Watch, and I just found this completely interesting. And the article starts with a really excellent question. If you buy something today, what exactly are you buying? Now, the answer could obviously determine the path of the push to give Americans the right to repair for their possessions that they have actually purchased. But I think that is a really interesting question. So, for example, if you buy an album on iTunes, for example, from Apple, because you would rather quote unquote own it than listen to it on a streaming service like Spotify, it isn't the same thing as buying the physical CD or tape or vinyl or 8-track or, whatever you're into. You're only buying a digital license to the intellectual property with its own rules as dictated by the contract you enter into with Apple, the contract you and I never read. Amazon has been notorious for this, by the way, just on a tangent regarding Kindle purchases. If they have a falling out with a publishing house, instead of basically letting the book stay on your Kindle, they simply revoke it from your account even though you've paid for it. It's like Amazon walking into your house and taking the physical book off your shelf and walking back out the door with it. That's essentially what they're doing, or that's what it's been equated to. Now, the notion of basically a continuing contract between buyer and seller instead of the actual purchase of a physical good has become contentious with the rise of the right to repair movement. The intention is to give consumers the right to repair a product if it breaks, instead of being forced to buy a new one or pay the original manufacturer to repair it. Now, President Biden has advocated for a consumer's right to repair, basically to fix purchased products as they see fit. A House bill in Congress was introduced this past June requiring original equipment manufacturers to supply, and I quote, "for the purposes of diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of such equipment to independent repair providers or owners of such digital electronic equipment manufactured by or on behalf of or sold otherwise supplied by the original equipment manufacturer." In other words, they need to give you all of the information that you would need, or your local repair shop that's independent, basically all the information you would need to successfully repair your device. Now, a Federal Trade Commission report released also in June concluded that, quote, "there is scant evidence to support manufacturers' justifications for repair restrictions." The FTC is investigating the matter as President Biden requested in one of his most prominent executive orders issued earlier on in his presidency. Now, there have been prominent examples of manufacturers, and I've used some of these before, basically selling expensive products and then refusing to allow independent repairs on them. John Deere, the tractor maker, is one of those, and they're the common cited example because the farmers that are basically buying this farm equipment sued them for access to the software that ran their tractors and harvesters so they could repair the equipment independently and less expensively than what John Deere was charging. Recently, John Deere said that it supported a customer's right to ownership and repair, and that less than 2% of all repairs actually required a software update. Another prominent example is Apple that I mentioned before, which reserves the right not to sell parts and tools to repair personnel who do not work at Apple's retail stores, and voids customer warranties if they try to repair their own broken iPhones, MacBooks, iPads, etc. The issue, however, is a lot more widespread than simply Apple and John Deere. We're talking about medical equipment, other tech equipment, and all of this. Now, the article actually made some good points about essentially repair monopolies and all of that, but I actually want to focus on the crux of what I think is the difficulty here, because breaking up a repair monopoly most people will be totally fine with. And for the record, I am for the right to repair. I think that's a right that we all should have. But I think the real crux here is ownership. Our concept of ownership has become a bit of an anachronism in an economy that has become more service-oriented than manufacturing-oriented. So, for example, more and more corporations are quote-unquote buying capital equipment less and less, opting instead to lease the equipment or pay for services on someone else's equipment, with one of the best examples being things like networking equipment. Increasingly tech companies sell less equipment and more tech as a service. This concept has been around for 50 years, thanks to Rolls-Royce, who actually started selling engines, these very sophisticated engines, to airline companies, basically leasing it to them, saying that this comes with, certified repairs and maintenance and all this kind of stuff. And so essentially, it's been around forever, but only recently, with mass technology adoption and the cloud, has the world seen a shift in how fast we adopt new technology, but also how long we keep it? Now, if the global economy continues to become more of a lending economy than a purchasing one, the right to repair, quote unquote, a product that we purchase might seem anachronistic in a few years. Or maybe like a niche hobby. In other words, there are people that buy turntables with vacuum tubes, bass amplifiers, those kinds of things. But still, for the consumers who want that right on a widespread level, many of these issues will be the ones that the FTC will be confronting as they examine right to repair moving forward. And if you think about it, we all walk into, for example, like a mobile phone, place. Very few of us buy, let's say, unlocked phones, not from the carrier. We'll walk into Verizon or Sprint or AT&T and say, yeah, like here, I'm turning in my old phone from 2 years and here's my new phone and all of that. And I want my new phone. And at that point, you don't necessarily own it unless you're buying that phone outright or you're buying it, independent of that. But most people overwhelmingly are not. And you're paying month to month. And so you might be like 36 payments left on your mobile phone. Does that give you the right to repair? And I think that's one of those questions, that is out there. When you buy a new car, it comes with a warranty, but you're still responsible for things like oil changes, brakes, new tires, etc., as those are typically not covered under the wear and tear provisions. If I were to walk into, let's say, the Verizon or the AT&T store, or, take your pick, with a damaged phone, Verizon should be basically fixing that for me, as I am essentially leasing to own that phone, or I'm making payments on that phone, as I just do every month until the phone is paid off. So I think these are things that we really need to understand. Not to mention the fact that as things are turning around very quickly, meaning, if there's a ton of people out there that had the iPhone 12 that now bought the 13 and they'll buy the 14 and the 15 and the 16 and on, we are continuously moving forward with that technology adoption, which doesn't necessarily aggravate the right or impede the right to repair. But the question is, how many people are actually going to be doing that? And if that is the case, is it more the independent shop owners? Is it more the individual attempting to do this themselves? And again, there will always be those people that are niche. I'm all for the right to repair, but I think this is a really interesting arguing point that the Apples and the Amazons and the John Deeres of the world can essentially say, well, you're buying a new phone every year. It's got to basically stay within our ecosystem for whatever reason. So I think it's going to be an interesting argument. I'm going to see where this goes, obviously, as I watch multiple things. But that is your news of the day, and I thought it was interesting. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.